Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Atonement. By Ian McEwan. Written by British author and Nobel Prize laureate Ian McEwan, Atonement was released in 2001 and became an international bestseller. Success came quickly for this novel. Time magazine named it one of the top 100 English-language novels published since 1923. When the book was transformed into a critically acclaimed film in 2007, it won both the Academy Award and British BAFTA Award nominations. One of the novel's central themes is the concept of atonement and taking responsibility for one's previous errors. A young girl named Bryony Talis falsely accuses a guy named Robbie Turner of rape in this period drama set in the English countryside in the mid-1930s. When Bryony observes her elder sister and a family friend, Robbie, in a passionate hug, she believes he is about to assault her. Bryony tells the authorities that Robbie was responsible for the rape of a family member, and he is detained on her word alone. Cecilia, Bryony's sister and the man she loves, protects Robbie and then leaves her family out of resentment for siding with her sister. After serving 3 years in prison, Robbie agrees to be recruited into the military in order to get the remainder of his sentence vacated. When Bryony moves to London to work as a nurse, she breaks up with her sister, who has never forgiven her for accusing Robbie of cheating on her. There is nothing Bryony can do to change the fact that Robbie was not the one who raped her, and she thinks she must pay for her actions the hard way. We see Bryony as an elderly woman in the 1990s at the novel's conclusion. A successful author has revealed that Cecilia and Robbie died in the war without her ever being able to apologize. As a sort of restitution, she plans to write and publish a book detailing the events of that fatal night in 1935. Bryony Talis, a 13-year-old girl living in 1930s wartime England, is a brilliant and creative young woman. Her older brother Leon, who is visiting from London for the weekend to spend time with his family, sees her rehearsing a play she wrote. This is the beginning of the novel. Piero, Lola, and Jackson, Bryony's cousins from the north, are also in town. Bryony begins directing her cousins as soon as they arrive, giving them roles in her play and giving them instructions on how to act. The Trials of Arabella is the title of the play. As soon as Emily, Bryony's mother, finished reading it, she gushed about how much she liked it, and Cecilia, her older sister, agreed in a condescending way. Even though Lola is 2 years older than Bryony, she pushes Bryony for the role as Arabella's eldest cousin. Finally, Bryony relents and gives it to her. As they practice the play, Lola continues to make fun of the lines, which enrages Bryony. Cecilia, Bryony's sister, is the subject of the next chapter's backstory. Cecilia recently received her bachelor's degree and has returned to her hometown. She has no idea where her life is going. Cecilia and Robbie, the son of the Talis maids, have been friends since they were young. Even though they went to the same university, the two had different social circles because of their class differences. In Cecilia's mind, this has caused a rift in their relationship. A man named Paul Marshall, whom Cecilia has never seen, is accompanying Leon back to the house. She spends a considerable amount of time arranging a vase of flowers for his room in an attempt to make an impact on him. Cecilia makes her way to the fountain to get some water for the vase. The moment Robbie sees her, he demands to help. Despite Cecilia's objections, they are unable to keep the vase from falling into the fountain, where it was broken. In order to gather the vase's fragments, Cecilia dives into the fountain barefoot. As she peers out the window from inside the house, Bryony sees her sister and Robbie fighting. Bryony is bewildered by the situation in front of her and even more so when her sister removes her clothes and enters the fountain. Bryony's vivid imagination takes control, and she starts inventing stories to explain what she's witnessing in the world around her. Whether Robbie has just proposed to Cecilia and she has decided to drown herself to avoid him, she thinks. As a result, she wonders if Robbie is attempting to blackmail her sister. In order to obtain a better understanding of the situation, she is aware that she needs to keep an eye on it. It's Cecilia's job to restore and hide the vase. She runs into Bryony, who is sobbing in the corridor. Because she feels bad about the play she wrote, Bryony admits that she thinks it was a mistake. Outside, Cecilia meets Leon and Paul as they arrive. Danny Hardman, a buddy of the two, joins them. When Cecilia and Paul first meet, they instantly begin flirting with each other. When Leon tells Cecilia that he is having supper with Robbie the following night, Cecilia is enraged. The two men argue. As long as Robbie is in her head, Cecilia will keep trying to get her hands on Paul. The prospect of getting married to him is deliciously self-destructive for her, despite her belief that he is foolish. With no reason, Bryony abandons the notion of putting on the play she had planned. Lola comforts her brothers as they weep over their loneliness in the cousins' room. It is Paul Marshall's turn to enter the room. To comfort the distressed guys, he ends up flirting with Lola because he realizes she is getting close to the legal drinking age in California. Bryony fantasizes about harming or killing Lola outside in the garden. She thinks she should stop writing at all costs. Whenever Bryony had a horrible dream and needed her sister's reassuring words, she would say come back to her. Robbie is preparing dinner at the maid's house across the property, and he is thinking about Cecilia as he does so. He's unsure of how he feels about her and whether or not he made the right decision by accepting the invitation to supper. To apologize to Cecilia for smashing the vase, Robbie decides to write a letter. However, he has a hard time keeping his thoughts focused on the task at hand, and he even writes about his feelings for her in one of his drafts. Robbie chats briefly with his mom before going out to eat. Bryony is standing on a bridge over the lake that encircles the Talis house as he makes his way to the house. Robbie urges Bryony to run ahead and give the letter to Cecilia, and she hands it to Bryony. Having agreed, Bryony dashes off. Upon her departure, Robbie learns he accidentally swapped the real letter with an obscene draft he had written about his sexual aspirations for Cecilia, which was meant to be sent to her. Bryony hands Cecilia the note and rushes to welcome Leon when she returns to the house. Astonished, Cecilia understands that Robbie feels the same way. As she mulls about this, she notices that the letter does not come with an accompanying envelope. Bryony ignores her queries when she asks if it was presented to her sealed. Bryony rushes up the stairs to begin preparing for the evening's festivities. Her narration reveals that she did in fact read the letter and its depraved substance. She takes a seat and muses on what to do with the newfound knowledge. Bryony believes that the letter and the fountain incident have made her an adult and that she can now write as a true author. When Lola walks into the room, she bursts into tears, terrified that her brothers would find out. As a result of their parents' divorce, they believe that she is the reason they were sent to the Talis residence for the summer. Bryony makes an effort to cheer Lola up, and the two no longer regard each other as adversaries. Lola learns what Bryony wrote in the letter. As a result of her disbelief, Lola advises that they contact the authorities. Bryony joins Lola in the dining room after a little pause. Her father's study, on the other hand, is making a commotion and she enters to investigate. Robbie and Cecilia are there, too. With Cecilia chained to the wall and Robbie's fingers tucked neatly under her hem, danger abounds. Bryony feels Robbie is attacking her sister because she doesn't understand what she's seeing. Cecilia leaves the scene without saying a word once her sister's name is called. It's just Bryony and Robbie in the room, and neither of them acknowledges the other. The family sits down for dinner and chats politely, but with an undercurrent of unease. We see things from Robbie's perspective, and he goes straight to Cecilia to apologize for the letter he sent. The moment Cecilia escorted him into the study, he knew he was about to have a hard time for his behavior. Cecilia told Robbie that she felt Bryony had also seen the letter when they were alone, and Robbie, mortified, sincerely apologizes. Awakening sentiments for Robbie have Cecilia bring them inside the study, where they can't be heard by anyone but her. Eventually, they begin to passionately kiss and have sex with one another. One of the first things they hear is Bryony yelling Cecilia's name. After Cecilia leaves the library, Robbie has to deal with Bryony, whom he avoids by being silent. Bryony and Cecilia exchange barbs over the dinner table as they try to hide their feelings of resentment. Bryony begins to chastise her cousins for hitting their younger sister. However, Paul Marshall finds it amusing that they accuse him of breaking up a previous dispute between the cousins and their sister. Bronte and Bryony quickly notice that the twins had vanished during their chat. On one of their chairs, she discovers a letter stating that they are fleeing. Robbie is saddened by this news because he had been eagerly awaiting the end of the supper so that he and Cecilia could finish what they had started in the study. The family still organizes search parties to locate the missing twins on the estate's grounds. Paul Marshall makes a lonesome trek away. Her fear of being alone with Robbie also causes Bryony to begin exploring the grounds on her own. It is hoped that the twins will soon return, so Lola and Talis' mother remain in the house. The narrator emphasizes that Robbie's decision to look for himself will forever alter his life. The scratches and bruises on Lola that Emily, the mother of the Talis children, suspects the daughter received as a result of the struggle with her siblings become apparent while she waits with Lola. Emily, on the other hand, thinks the marks odd and is baffled as to why. Lola finally goes to join the search party after becoming agitated by her brother's disappearance and Emily's unwanted attention. When Jack, the father of the Talis, calls, They talk about the disappearance of the twins. Jack explains it away as nothing more than pranks. The search party returns without the twins as she is talking to her husband. On the other end, Leon asks his mother to call his father and see if he can get home soon. Even though Emily cannot hear what he says on the phone, she is aware that something is awry and the twins' situation is dire. Leon tells everyone to gather in the drawing room so that he may tell Emily and Lola the news. Leon then hangs up the phone. The search party outside is mentioned at the beginning of the next chapter. Despite the fact that Cecilia has opted to go off with Leon, Bryony is still searching for the twins on her own. Bryony sets off to investigate the temple, a large wooden edifice on the lake. However, as she nears the temple, she spots two people inside. One of the characters, Lola, shouts for Bryony. The larger figures flee the scene at the sound of her voice. The temple floor is littered with Lola's terrified screams. Lola was allegedly raped, however it is never explicitly stated in the story. To try to console Lola, Bryony asks if it was him, meaning that it was Robbie. She never responds because she's too distraught to speak. Robbie adopts the identity of the assailant when Lola is unable to identify him. As far as Lola is concerned, she doesn't know who attacked her. Due to him covering her eyes, it was impossible for the victim to see him clearly. But everything she says only strengthens Bryony's conviction that Robbie was responsible for the attack. Bryony tries to reassure Lola and encourage her to return to the house with her. However, Leon and Cecilia appear before they can get there. Lola is carried by Leon without any questions being asked. Bryony tells the story of how she's confident she knows what's going to happen. In the following chapter, Bryony is interviewed by police. Leon, Lola and Cecilia were all in the Talis house when they were attacked, and Emily took Lola upstairs to clean her up and wait for a doctor to arrive. Arrival of two police inspectors. When Paul Marshall returns, he is visibly shaken by the events that have transpired. After running to her sister's room, Bryony brings the letter back to the chief investigator. They pass the letter to Leon, who reads it and then gives it to his mother. Soon, Cecilia grows enraged at the invasion of her privacy and learns what they are reading. As a result, Bryony tells the investigators, along with her mother and brother, everything she's seen over the past few days between Robbie and Cecilia. It is Bryony's job to tell the detectives what happened to Lola, and she does so with a resounding yes. All night, the family waits for Robbie to return. The house will soon be invaded by a stranger. Two young relatives accompany Robbie as he returns to town. Initially, the family is happy to hear that the twins are doing well, but this happiness quickly turns to dread and animosity toward Robbie. In the meantime, Emily has sent Bryony to her room, where she has to watch helplessly from the window as Robbie is arrested and taken away in handcuffs into a police car. After seeing her running toward Robbie, she feels she is apologizing to him in astonishment. Police are leaving when Robbie's mother appears, shouting, "They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying." During World War II, the second part of the narrative takes place in France. Two British troops are led by Robbie through the countryside to Dunkirk, where they hope to board a ferry back to England before the end of World War II. In a barn, Robbie and his fellow soldiers, Nettle and Mace, seek safety. Robbie's thoughts go to his time in prison as he falls asleep next to them. For 3.5 years, Robbie was in prison, according to the information we have. During this period, Cecilia remained faithful to him and was finally outcast by her family because of her loyalty. She's currently a nurse in London, where she lives. To get out of prison, Robbie pledges to join the military. Sadly, this reduces the amount of time that he has to spend with Cecilia. Robbie's training necessitates a one-time meeting between the two in a cafe. Despite Robbie's pleas, Cecilia refused to contact her family because she is still enraged by them for imprisoning him based on the inconclusive evidence of a young girl who was known for her over-the-top imagination. It is revealed that Bryony skipped college to become a nurse, and Robbie was told by Cecilia that Bryony had been working on a plan with her to meet with him. Claiming that Robbie was framed, Cecilia believes that Bryony is trying to clear her name. Throughout the letter, Cecilia expresses her doubts about meeting with her sister. Awakening the following morning, Robbie and his comrades prepare to continue their march towards Dunkirk. Many years ago, when Robbie was still staying with the Talis family, he tried to teach Bryony how to swim in the lake. It was a failure. To see if Robbie would save her, Bryony pretended to drown. In the end, he confronts her and chastises her for her behavior. Asked why she did it, Bryony responds, "Because I love you." Assuming it to be a schoolgirl crush, Robbie recalls. The day after that, Bryony stopped showing her affection for him, and he assumed she had moved on. However, he now questions whether her accusation against him was motivated by vengeance for the previous incident. Forgiveness is an issue that has been on his mind recently. After a long journey, the three soldiers arrive at Dunkirk. Many soldiers are stranded on the shore, and there are no signs of any ships approaching. Chaos reigns in the town. The soldiers, including Robbie, scour the town for food and lodging. Looting is rampant as soldiers throng the town in fear of a German surprise attack at any moment. For the night, the three warriors settle into a cellar. They will be evacuated the next morning, and Nettle informs Robbie that he has a good chance of making it. It's possible that Robbie has gangrene after he was hit by shrapnel. To help him sleep, he reads through Cecilia's letter once more. Like when she said her final goodbye to him after he was arrested, she concludes it with the words, "Goodbye. I'll be patiently awaiting your arrival. Return to this page soon as a matter of fact." While holding the letter, Robbie nods off to sleep. Our journey continues when we see Bryony, now 18, studying to become a nurse. After a brief stint as a short story writer, Bryony chose to become a nurse in order to contribute to the war effort. The government's efforts to remove women and children from London have forced the Talis family's estate to take in boarders, and she is aware of this through her mother's weekly letters to her. For training purposes, the estate's grounds are also being demolished. To be safe in case of a bombing, the house's valuables have been transferred, and the vase that Cecilia and Robbie argued over was dropped, breaking it. Among other things, the letter mentions Danny Hardman's recent enlistment in the Navy and Lola and Paul Marshall's engagement. Since that terrible night in the temple, Bryony has understood that Paul Marshall was most likely the perpetrator of Lola's rape, but she feels helpless to do anything about it. For the first time in her life, Bryony wonders if her parents have come to believe that it was Paul Marshall who was responsible for Robbie's detention and Cecilia's decision to abandon them. Bryony's writing ambitions are kept alive in part by her daily journaling. Hundreds of wounded soldiers from France are expected to arrive at the hospital in the near future. As she works in the midst of the devastation and misery, Bryony is unable to concentrate on her duties. This passage's narrator depicts many of war's gruesome details in brutal detail. On her way home from work, Bryony discovers that her short tale, Two Figures by a Fountain, has been rejected by a magazine. Although the letter has a peppy tone, it pushes her to modify her story and give it another shot. As soon as the wedding ceremony for Lola and Paul is over, Bryony walks up and enters secretly. Despite the narration, Bryony is unsure as to whether or not Lola has seen her and recognized her. After that, she makes her way to Cecilia's place. When Cecilia sees Bryony for the first time, she reacts angrily toward her. Angry upon seeing Bryony, Robbie emerges from a rear room. It appears as though Bryony is trying to make amends, but it's clear that she doesn't expect them to. If Bryony is honest in her pursuit for atonement, Robbie encourages her to go to her parents and tell them the truth about what happened on the night she accused him of raping Lola, but Robbie won't accept her apologies and insists that she tell her parents and law enforcement officials the truth about what transpired that night. In the narration, it is revealed that this was the last time Bryony saw either of them before she leaves. In the book's final chapter, we have a flashback to the year 1999. At the Imperial War Museum, Bryony is honoring her 77th birthday by checking out a book from the library. Letters from Colonel Nettle have been sent to Bryony, who has been asked to compose a story about herself. Bryony has recently been diagnosed with vascular dementia as well. She is rapidly losing her memory, yet she appears to be comfortable with the situation. She knows exactly where each character in her novel went. Leon is still alive, and he's been through 4 marriages by now. His current wife takes care of their children while he is confined to a wheelchair. Paul and Lola are now Lord and Lady and have amassed much money. Bryony was married to Thierry, who passed away lately. As a successful author, her books are read in schools across England. A golf course and hotel were built on the site of the Talis family estate after her parents' deaths. Bryony soon finds herself at Pierrot's grandson's hotel for a family get-together. For a performance of her younger relatives in her old play, The Tales of Arabella, Bryony is brought into the library. Bryony is both surprised and delighted as she watches the show. Her apology to Pierrot for canceling the play all those years ago is her final act of penitence in this story. Bryony works on her new novel late into the night at her old writing desk. It's the story she's always wanted to tell, the one about her erroneous accusation of rape against Robbie. So that she won't be held liable for failing to change the names of the characters in the novel, She plans to publish the book after all the characters have passed away. Bryony delivers the final twist in the plot at the very end of the book. Robbie and Cecilia were only together in her interpretation of events. She fabricated the scene in Robbie and Cecilia's apartment where she first met them. As it turned out, Robbie perished in Dunkirk from gangrene, and Cecilia was tragically killed shortly thereafter in a bombing in London. For the first time in her life, Bryony regrets never having spoken to her sister again because of her fear of being exposed. Since Robbie and Cecilia's wartime letters are now in a museum, she has been able to piece together all she knows about their experiences. Instead of the real ending being cheerful or definitive, she reworked it to match the narrative finale. She wants this to be the only version of the story that people remember. The last thing Bryony can do for her sister and Robbie, she believes, is to do this final act of penance. Bryony Talis. When the story begins, Bryony is a creative, intelligent, perhaps overly imaginative teenage girl. Bryony's persona and her environment are established in the first few chapters of the book. When it comes to the people and the world around her, she is a demanding person who expects a lot. She is prone to have vivid, almost hallucinatory daydreams about the world around her when she lets her imagination run wild. This type of daydream is generally violent and ominous. Her initial assumption is that he proposed to Cecilia and that Cecilia opted to drown herself in the fountain as a means of rebuffing his advances. As a result, she comes to the conclusion that Robbie is extorting money from Cecilia. They may have been influenced by popular novels and plays of the time, which encouraged a young girl's creativity and appreciation for drama. A number of characters in the novel have a personal connection to the Atonement, but it's primarily Bryony, who feels obligated to make amends for her erroneous accusations of rape against Robbie. In spite of her overly dramatic exclamation, Bryony believes that the scene she sees outside in the fountain marks the end of her innocence, and it turns out that her belief is confirmed when Robbie is arrested and the life in the Talis house begins to break apart as a result. Robbie raping Lola is an innocent falsehood that has life-altering consequences for everyone involved in the story, including Bryony. Their lives are forever changed at that one instant, and it has an enormous impact on the rest of their lives. Bryony bears a heavy burden for this, and she lives the rest of her days as a quieter, more reflective version of herself as a result. As part of her penance, Bryony begins working as a nurse, but she refuses to speak to her sister or Robbie again out of shame. Cecilia Talis, Bryony's older sister by 10 years, who, at the beginning of the story, feels useless as an adult still residing in her parents' household and wishes to find a meaning in life. To begin with, Cecilia appears to be evaluating numerous options for what she wants her life to be when the novel opens. Despite the fact that she doesn't love Paul Marshall and thinks he's foolish, she's considering getting married to him. Although Cecilia desires it, she is unable to feel required by her family. While waiting for anything exciting to happen in her life, she is always on the lookout for something new to come her way. Cecilia is seen to be disorganized and strewn around the floor. Bryony and her had a closer bond when they were younger, but their connection has since deteriorated. In her letters to Robbie, Cecilia uses the phrase, "come back" to calm Bryony down after she has a nightmare, as we learn. Robbie is the focus of Cecilia's story. Both of them feel isolated from one another in the beginning of the story because of their social class differences. They both attended the same university and found this for the first time. Cecilia is taken aback when she receives Robbie's first letter and learns that she harbors the same feelings for him that he does. Cecilia is the only member of the Talis family that believes Robbie is innocent when he is accused of raping Lola. Her family's separation grows wider, and she ends up leaving them behind and moving to London to work as a nurse on her own. We learn at the end of the novel that she was killed in a London railway station bombing. Robbie Turner, the son of the Talis maid and the man who was wrongfully accused by Bryony. Robbie is a 23-year-old literature major who recently graduated from college. Jack Talis paid for his education. Nobody knows what happened to Ernest, Robbie's father, who abandoned the family when Robbie was a tiny child. According to his mother, Robbie was killed during World War I. Though they come from different social classes, Robbie and the Talis children have known each other since childhood and consider each other part of the family. During his time at university, he, like Cecilia, begins to notice the social distinctions between his and the Talis families. However, he seems more cognizant of these disparities since he is in love with Cecilia. When Robbie mistakenly sends a letter expressing his feelings for Cecilia, he is mortified and apologies for his carelessness. They begin their short courtship in the study, but Cecilia soon expresses her feelings for him. Bryony, who is too young to grasp the gravity of the situation, sees their passionate embrace and takes it as a personal attack on her younger sister. In the story, Robbie and Cecilia make amends for failing to disclose the sexual issue to Bryony right away. They both try to avoid discussing it, and as a result, they don't realize how Bryony has misinterpreted what she has observed. As a result, Bryony concludes that Robbie is guilty of rape. In exchange for his release from prison, he agrees to serve a stint in the military. Refusing to back down, Robbie accepts and is killed by shrapnel in France. Lola Quincy, the eldest Quincy sibling who visits over the summer with her two siblings. They are the Talis cousins whose parents are divorcing and have sent their children away to avoid the nasty details. Bryony and Lola are 2 years apart in age, so Lola has to contend with a lot of power battles at first. Bryony believes Lola is a cunning con artist who is taking advantage of the Talis family's grief to further her own ends. The story strongly suggests that Paul Marshall sexually assaults Lola during his visit and then rapes her afterward. As a result of Bryony's intervention, which chased away the rapist, she was able to persuade Lola that Robbie was the one who had attacked her, and Lola, in her astonishment, agrees. Even though she appears to be aware that this isn't the case, she's afraid to speak up and admit it. Later in the narrative, Paul Marshall marries Lola for reasons that we are not privy to, and as Lord and Lady Marshall they enjoy great wealth. It is revealed that Lola is an 80-year-old woman who emerges at the Talis family reunion at the end of the book. Paul Marshall, the friend of Leon's who comes to visit the Talis home on the fateful weekend. To the Talis family, Paul comes across as arrogant and conceited, and as a result, Cecilia concludes that he is naive. This war with Germany would open up a slew of business prospects for Paul, who appears to be practically hoping for it. From the moment he shows up, there are major hints that Paul has feelings for Lola and would eventually abuse her. Lola's bruised arms and some scratches on his face coincide with Bryony's discovery. After seeing a dark person flee from the temple after raping Lola, Bryony has every reason to believe that Paul Marshall was responsible. However, she refuses to confess this, and instead accuses Robbie of being the culprit. Paul gets rich selling chocolate during the war and marries Lola as a result of his own scheming. He becomes quite wealthy, and the last time we see him he is an elderly man in a wheelchair. In 1948, Ian Russell McEwan was born in Aldershot, England, and is an English novelist. McEwan's father was a major in the army, and as a boy, he relocated frequently, spending time in Asia, Germany, and Northern Africa. When he was 12, his family returned to England, and McEwan attended the University of Sussex, where he earned a degree in literature. After that, he made the decision to pursue a master's degree in creative writing at Columbia University. The original edition of McEwan was released in 1975. First Love, Last Rites, a collection of short stories, was his debut effort. In 1978 and 1981, many more collections of short stories were published, 2 of which were made into films. McEwan's debut novel, Enduring Love, was published in 1997 and met with critical acclaim but commercial failure. In 2001, McEwan published his best-known work, Atonement, after a 4-year hiatus. A new novel by Ian McEwan, who last published in 2012, is currently in the works. Many literary honors have been bestowed upon McEwan's name, including the Shakespeare Prize in 1999 and 6 Man Booker Prize nominations to date. In 1982, McEwan married Penny Allen, who he divorced 2 years later. Together, they've raised 2 grown sons. McEwan remarried 2 years later, in 1997, to Annalena McAfee. They've been together ever since. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.